Welcome again to another episode of Algorand Developer Office Hours. I'm Ryan Fox. I'm joined today by Russ Fassino. He is my colleague on the developer relations team here at Algorand, and he's going to be presenting today Algorand Indexer, which is a nice database tool that takes all of the block information, brings it into a database, and he's going to show us how we can query that data out of the database and use it within our applications. So, without further ado, Russ, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. That's great. I feel like a little bit of deja vu here doing this session about database stuff. I used to be a DBA at one point in my career. I don't like to tell too many people that, but nonetheless, it was the case. And kind of looking forward to doing this session and getting into some data off the database. So really good stuff there. So let's get started. So you're new to Algorand Indexer. So what is it and what can I search? Probably the two big questions. And we'll take a look at that as well as examples. What kind of solutions can use something like Indexer? Well, one that comes to mind is like a leaderboard type thing. Maybe you're building a game and you got assets or tokens available to the players and you want to build a leaderboard. Who's got the most tokens? So which account has the most assets of a particular asset ID? This is a common query. And this is very hard to do on a native blockchain because you are scanning, millions of blocks, and it is relatively easy to do with that type of query with Indexer. So we'll see how that gets done, as well as, kind of giving you ideas now in terms of what you can do for solutions that might need this. And how can I access an Indexer instance? How do I get it? How do I use it? And what about using Explorer with Indexer, kind of in combination? You'll probably be popping back and forth between the two, and I'll show you a little bit of examples with that going on and going forward, especially when you're maybe testing your Indexer code and you want to verify, that what you're seeing is actually on the blockchain. So that's kind of a useful thing to kind of talk through as an exercise. Then how do I create my own instance? You can do that as well. So the agenda then is basically this for the remainder of the session here. What is Algorand Indexer? What can I search on and how to access? So this is the lay of the land here for what is Algorand Indexer. You can see on the far right is the Algorand blockchain, which has the LOD process, which is the process that is utilized to create accounts and do transactions and create assets and applications. So once that is done, basically the indexer will feed off of that node, off of that AlgoD process. And what happens then is it will go ahead and index it and put it into a PostgreSQL database. And so your queries will actually all be against the PostgreSQL database. And that can be done from any one of the SDKs, the Go SDK, the Java, JavaScript, Python, as well as C#. Those all allow access to indexer data. What can I search on? Well, again, it's just like a regular old database, right? You got different record types out there, and record types include the transactions. The accounts is very surprising when I show you that in one of our tools here later today. You'll see exactly what makes up an account. And it actually consists of both assets and applications. So there's a one-to-many relationship between the accounts table and the assets table, as well as the accounts table and the applications table. And we'll see that in the database as well. And what kind of things can I filter on? Yes, you can filter by many different fields. You can specify the round, for example, if I want to see what the status is of an account at a particular round, you could see its balance at that point, or anything else that's affiliated with that particular account. So it really provides the ability to do a snapshot in time, based on the round number. Also, you can search on date and time. So if you have a particular transaction and maybe you're looking to find out if, maybe from a receipt or something like that, that someone has actually done a transaction, You could specify the exact date and time of the transaction. Again, both of those you kind of got to know ahead of time. But then you get into other ones, where you have, give me all the sender addresses for a particular, a receiver address, for a particular transaction. Give me some balances. You can do filters on signature type. Is it a multi-sig? Is it an account sign off? Is it an LSIG? You can also do filters on the type of transaction that is done, as well as the asset holdings and asset names. And this is just to name a few here. In terms of the queries, what you could do is you can look up historical account data for a particular round. You have enriched transactions and account data with the confirmation round, which would be the block containing the transaction, the confirmation timestamp, the signature type, the asset ID. You can close the close amount when applicable. When you do transactions, you have a close amount, and also rewards. You can do reports on rewards as well. Well, there are limits to the max search results. So this is something I do want to point out. When you are searching for transactions, the most transactions you'll get back in one query would be 1,000. However, if you're not, you can put your code into a loop in your application where you can paginate and get the next chunk of 1,000 and the next chunk of 1,000 and so forth. Also, you can see the account limit there and the asset search limit, as well as asset balance searches is at 1,000 as well. And I'll show you how to do this in the code. An indexer on how to access and build your own. You can do that. You can use a service through either PureStake or RAN Labs, or also a third option now is with Sandbox. Just bring it up. That's all you got to do, and you'll have an indexer available with the defaults of Sandbox up. That's it. All right, and we'll talk more now about each of these. So if you want to build your own, you need an AlgoD node that needs to be full archived and indexed. This is relatively large. I actually have one running on my machine. And when I did my backups, it was over 140 gigabyte. And one other note is, do not use fast catch up on the node. You actually got to let this thing build. And the way you would get a full archive and index is there's a config file setting in the node data folder that will facilitate that with an option to do full archive and index. Those are normally set to off as a default. You need to turn those on. This could take a while to update, could take up to 4 days to populate. And there are some really great instructions on our developer portal that has information on how to do that. Also, what that entails is basically setting up a database, and which is the progress database. I have a testnet indexer built here. You can see in the diagram. On the left are all the commands that you would need to fire this indexer up from the command line. And though that I put into one statement here, this is how I start up my indexer when I want to get it going. And the last line here is the AlgoD equals, and then your node, you point at the node and what port number you want to call it. Now, one thing is if you are using the Sandbox indexer, that will default to 8980. So what I do is I always just bump mine up by one per my own indexer here to 81. So I got no conflicts there. And then this is to do the update. Now, if you want to just have like a read only on that as well, maybe one person or in the organization is creating the instance and maintaining it. You would just use the no AlgoD just to read it instead of the last line over there. And so that would go ahead and read it for you. And so let me just take one quick look at this website here. All right, so this gives you a lot of great information on how to get going, and it tells you right here you must connect to a PostgreSQL. So there's a link to how to get set up for that, and then you want to provide a REST API for searching the indexer. And so it's network agnostic. You can go to beta net, test net, mainnet, and now you have it available in private net as well in the Sandbox. You have a lot of references here for the API, REST API, and searching a blockchain. But we'll get to those later, right? To install it, you would just download the binaries from the link here on GitHub, extract them, and then run the indexer we had just gone through in that slide. And this is where I've got that particular command from. So it really is not too bad to get one of these set up. You just need to have the data, the space for the data available. All right, so using as a service, there's a couple of services and more are coming out all the time. One is with the PureStake, and you can see on the right some of the code you would use to access the base server here. You can see is testnet, PureStake IO, and then /IDX2. And then you specify your API key that you get in there in the tokens. That would be passed in as a token parameter right down below. And this is how you instantiate it, right? Just a new indexer, Algorand SDK, or wherever your SDK is that you're using on the language. And then you go ahead and instantiate it. And then also you got Algo Explorer on the bottom left. So many of you probably use this Algo Explorer.api to check the blockchain, do blockchain queries with or information there. There's also a developer API tab I want to call your attention to that's on that page. And at the bottom, you can see the Algorand Indexer v2 calls documented. So you got a couple choices there. And you have interactive test cases in both of those environments as well, so you can play with it right on the site. So it's very cool. Use your own indexer in Sandbox. This is really easy. You just do on the Sandbox command line, you just do .sandbox up. And when it gets done, it'll create a private network starting at block 1, at the Genesis block. And because of that, we can build the indexer as it's going. All right, so this is ready in minutes. It's very quick to do this. One caveat is you'll need to use REST API curl commands or Postman to verify your information. In other words, there's no Explorer in a private network. So if you're working with a testnet instance, either through building it yourself or through one of the services with PureStake and Rand Labs, then you could go ahead and use an Explorer to verify or work with, right, to verify everything is being reported correctly. That is one caveat. So that's why I'm going to spend a minute or two on Postman in here. And those that are familiar with Postman, even if you're not, and you are familiar with curl commands, you'll see the endpoints and everything that you would need to curl there to do that. So one of those two or any other API testing tool as well. All right, so there is one more place to get at it, and that is through Algosign. We did a session on that not too long ago. And there is an indexer available in that API. So if you're working with Algosign, which was done by PureStake, those that are unfamiliar with, that's basically a wallet in the Chrome browser you have available to you. It makes it very convenient for doing web app development to be able to use that particular tool to integrate with. So it's just algosigner.indexer. You can point it at which ledger and then give it the path for your particular endpoint. So that is the way in with Algosigner too. So let's take a look at these few links. So we got the REST API. So this does all of your endpoints. You can see them all documented here on the right. If you want to work with assets, for example, there's assets. These are all the parameters or filters that could be used. You can limit the number of results that come back, for example, on most of these queries. The next is used for pagination. So there's a lot, that's a good resource there. And then take a look at the searching the blockchain. This is the great site right here. This is the best one. So in my humble opinion, here you have how to instantiate it in each language. So you can see you got samples here in Python, Java, Go, and JavaScript. And then down below, once you start using it, we got different queries, right? So here we have a query in JavaScript. Also, The curl command is here too. If you wanted to utilize that, you can see the curl commands right there. You've got here, we're just going to search transactions for a minimum amount of 10, for example. And that's how this works. As you scroll down, you can see how these start to flow together. This is an example of taking a look at the next token string and in a while loop to loop through each set of page of data. And I'll step through that in a debugger in a minute. And then you also have all of these REST calls are support paginated results. So anytime you're dealing with transactions and accounts and account balances, asset balances, you'll see that available as a parameter. Then we got it broken down into historical data searches as well as note field searching. So you can go ahead and search just a prefix of the note, for example, just a few letters, it'll come up. Also, you have sample results in each of these, what it should look like, and then you're searching on accounts right down over here. So it's very easy. Just do accounts. If you want to search for a particular asset ID on all the accounts, this was that leaderboard example. Right there it is. Like one line of code, and boom, that'll get you what you need to know to build the leaderboard. A lot of things on here. So I would just encourage you to go through this. You can get the different lay of the land, all the different types of things that you can do from a doc perspective. And then on the endpoints, and by the way, the samples for everything I'm showing you is on the GitHub for our Algorand docs repository. And that's the link to get to all the indexer examples that you can see right there. So if I go out to the docs, I'll show you where to get to it right from there. Here's documentation. You want to go to explore features and go down to indexer. That brings up that page we were just at. And at the very bottom, of this page will be the link that I just showed you with all the code examples right down over here. So that'll go ahead and get you that. So that's very valuable. It's a lot of great code examples your way. The other thing I want to show you here now is this indexer REST API endpoints. And I updated the site to also not only include, there's open API specification for, you got both AlgoD and Indexer on this page here. And down below is the V1 stuff with the KMD if you need to get the KMD over there. But here is the two different types. You got the Oasis 3 and Oasis 2 as well, supported on each of these. Then I have a run and postman. So what I'm going to do is show you this. I'm just going to run and postman this REST API example. And it defaults to the local host environment with the port number that you would have on your Sandbox. So I'm going to say, go ahead, open this up in Postman for the Mac. And up this comes. I'm going to go ahead and import it. And so now you'll see on the left here, it populates this new indexer instance here toward the bottom. And for example, I can do a git search on accounts. And what I could do here is actually look up the account by ID. So here is if I hover over this, you can see right now it's set the local host 8980. For me, I've got to just do a slight modification. So you go to the collection, you edit that, and that's where those variables are stored. And I'm going to just change mine to 81 and then 81 and save that off. So now that's all set. And then if you take also a look at the headers, it already has the key in there for the token. And then these are all the parameters that you can see available. I've got asset ID, limit, next, greater than, over here, round, applications. And let's go ahead and look this up by, just go ahead and get all the accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and send a get, and there it is. Right now you can see some accounts coming up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this one here, which I've already got pre-done here. And we are going to put in, so the key field is going to be the account ID, right? So now I'm going to look up a specific account rather than bring back all the accounts. And when I do this, then we can see what's down below, right? Now you can see that accounts have assets as well as created apps. So these are your smart contracts, as well as created assets. So these are the creator account information, right? So what the index is for the asset, who's the clawback address, and all these are, like I said, in a one-to-many relationship between the account record and then the created assets. And then you get the round number, as well as pending rewards and everything else that's associated with that. So that kind of gives you the result that you're looking for. The next thing I'm going to do is look up account transactions. And the reason I'm going to show you this is this has a wealth of options over here. If you take a look at all these options, you got limit, next, note prefix, type, signature type. Is it MSEG? Is it a key reg? What's the transaction ID? You can search for particular transaction ID. You've got the round, minimum round, maximum round, asset ID, before time, after time, rekey to, if that's been done with rekeying, so you have that information. And for the account ID, I'm using the same account ID, but I'm also going to put in, give me this transaction for that account. And so now I'm going to get the transaction information. Now you can see what that database table looks like. You've got the close rewards, closing amount, confirm round, the fee, the genocide ID, which is very important, right, to make sure you're on the right network. You've got the payment transactions in there, what the amount is, if it's a close amount, I'll show you that, and who's the sender is, as well as the signature. So those are all done with that particular API REST call. The last one I'm going to show you here in Postman will be search for applications. So these are smart contracts is what you would actually be doing. And then what we see here is there's just a few parameters on this particular one. You can limit the response that comes back. You can do the propagation thing, or you can just get the application ID. So I got the application ID I'm going to fire off, and then this is going to go to do that. So now what you can see down below is the information that's associated with this application. And actually, if you went back to this account and you did the account query, you would see the same information in the account, but you'd have to parse through it a little bit more to get to this information. So this is a handy call when you're specifically looking for application information. And you can see here, this is the approval program. You got the clear state program. You got the creator. This is the global state. If they have any local state, that'll be on there as well. And then you got the global state schema. How many byte fields are there going to be used in this contract? How many numeric integers are there going to be used in this contract? So that gives you all your information there. All right, so next thing, let's go out to the code now. So the first thing we'll take a look at is this account info block, and this is all in JavaScript. I'm prepping for the JavaScript show tomorrow night, so it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. But if you are more familiar with another language, again, we've got examples in all the languages, and you should be able to just at least follow the concepts here, what needs to be done. So the first thing we're going to do, these are all going to be using the PureStake API, and this line here is going to instantiate the server. And here's the account we're going to seed and the round number that we want to look at. So what we want to look at is this particular account at this point in time at that round. And we're going to go ahead and do the lookup by account ID, passing in the account, and then passing in the round number on the call. So let's go ahead and run this. And try running it. There it is. Okay. So now we can go ahead and step over this. And there's the indexer call, and then let's log that information down below, and you can see it printed out right here. So here is an account. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but you can see we got this one amount is at 990. This is at 0. We got another one at 990. This is for the assets. Another 990 and 1,000. So that's the lay of the land at that point. Now, if I was to go ahead and modify this query and just take this round out and just do the current account, what it looks like, you'll see a little bit different of a display. And so now we'll go ahead and step over that. And now we'll come down over here and see what we got for this. So this is up to the date. And now if I come up here, you got 990. See, before, remember there was like a 0 right here. Now there's another 990. There's another 990 and another one and 1,000. So that's what it looks like currently. And you can also have the current round as part of this coming back saying, when was this actually run? And there is the current round number down below. So again, depends on what kind of queries you want to do, but you can utilize these very effectively depending on what your need is. All right, so that's that one. Now let's take a look at accounts application with paging. So this one here is interesting. So I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it to this breakpoint right here. And let's go ahead and stop that one. All right, so I'm going to explain this loop here now. So what I've got here is a limit of 2. I'm going to bring back 2 accounts. And I'm going to go ahead and do the search on these accounts. And when I do the search, it's going to come back in this account info. And then if I look at this account length, you can see that I've got 2 there. In fact, if I hover over the top, you can see the 2 addresses, the one that begins with A2 and the one that begins with ZP3B. And so that is good. So now I've got the first 2, but then I'm going to look for this account info field that has the next token. Now you can see the next token when I hover over that right up above here. The next token is built right in the ZP3B. It means to go to that one there. And so now if I go ahead and make sure I've got the account information, so that's the first bunch, right, that got displayed, all the account information there. And then I've got the next loop goes in and gets the next couple, and then print out the information there down below. And then I should be at all of them at this point. There should be 0. So I pop out of the loop, and then now I've got all the information down below. So again, we're just using the limit in conjunction with the next page to do your pagination. So that's an example of how to do something like that. So a very useful technique when you want to process large amounts of data and work with the limits that I mentioned in the deck that you have with like 1,000 accounts coming back at one time. All right, the next one we're going to show you is this asset ID minimum balance. So on the minimum balance, all we got to do is hit the currency greater than, and then you'll see that information up here down below. We have an asset ID we're going to end in, and we're going to say currency is greater than 9 on the asset. So this pertains to the balance on the asset. How many of these of this asset ID index does each account have? I'm doing a generic search, right? So you'll notice that some of these are lookups and some of these are search. This is search. This is giving all of the accounts. Other calls in Indexer are lookup. You'll see dot and it'll be a lookup, what you'll see there. And you'll see those actually in another example I got coming up. Okay, so let's run this. And what we want to do is just bump over the top of this, and then you can see all the results down below. So what we have here is, here we got an amount of 10, here we got an amount of 10, another amount of 10, there we got 0, then you got some bigger ones, right, for this particular address. Now, again, if I modify this query and say it's greater than 10 and run it, what you should see are fewer results that come in. In fact, that whole first account will not show up. So I'm going to pop over this, take a look at the results down below. And now what you can see here is every one of these is over 10. So you got all these 990s show up, but none of the ones with 10 show up down below. So again, that's a very successful run. And so,
hey, Russ, I wanted to interject if you're done with this one or you finished.
Yes, I am. The good time. Perfect.
All right, good. Thanks. So we did have a question. And it has to do with what's the difference between assets, the assets field versus the created assets field. So understanding and also bring in the fact of the native asset, the algo, and how those three pieces relate from balances and then creating assets as well.
Okay, let's take a look one more time at this account ID. All right, so this asset that you're seeing on the screen, which just contains the amount, asset ID, creator, and his frozen flag, is what every holder of that asset has. So that is a who's ever opted in and received, or actually who's ever opted in. If you opted in, you and haven't done any transactions yet, you would see an amount of 0 there. And it tells you which asset ID that you're holding with the asset number. So that's just a plain old Algorand standard asset consumer. So you're consuming that asset on your account. On the other hand, this asset ID 1226477 was actually created by this particular address. So this NI2ED created this particular, excuse me, I stand corrected. This is analogous, but it's for apps, right? If you want to look at assets, there's the one for assets, okay? Now you have a created asset, which has all the fields in it that you need to specify when you're creating an asset. Who's the clawback address? Who's the creator? Decimals, freeze manager and manager roles, the name, the total amount. And then if you did opt in to receive this asset in this account, then you would have one more of these for your account with the amount in it. So you'd have both of those on the account if you did opt in. And similarly now, what the same goes for the created apps. If you're creating an app, you will see the creator information here. And if you are opting into an app, you will see basically what your local state is and a couple other key things like the ID. That is really the difference between the two. And the bottom section here, this is for algos, right? So if you had algos in this account, it will tell you what your balance is right here. You can see the amount, and that's in algos. That's what your micro algos, that's what your micro balance is. So if you do the micro algos, it looks like it's 329 algos is what that looks like.
Perfect.
So
Thanks, Russ. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you very much. See, it pays to ask questions out there. If you got a question, odds are someone else that's in this room has the same question. So that's good. Thank you very much for doing that. All right, let's get back to the code. We'll show you our next demo here, which was the balances, right? So we just took a kind of a sneak peek of that in Postman. Let's go to asset balances, min balance right over here. And this one here, we're going to do a min balance of 200 on that particular asset. But notice we're going to do a lookup now, this time, not a search. So we're going to look up a particular asset ID. And then we're going to pull back all of the accounts that have this asset ID, but then you'll see the information, the response you get back is a little bit leaner. So let's take a look at this. All right, so now it executed and we have the results down below. And if we take a look at these results, you can see you don't see a lot of extraneous information. You see the address, you see the amount, and if it's frozen or not. And then what is the current round, right, to do that. So once again, this is the currency is greater than 200. If I did greater than 5, I ran this again, it will come back with more information. All the ones that got 10 in it will show up down here. And so this gives you a nice consistent list of accounts that have that asset. So this is how I would look at this one to start building a leaderboard type approach. Okay, let's do some more with assets. Let's take a look at searching asset names. All right, so I have a Rust coin, which is really high in value. It's getting right up there with the algo. And it's actually only in testnet. And let's see what we find when we do a search in all assets that have a name with Rust coin in it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And as this executes now, we'll see the search results come back on this with a result. Now it's taking a while. And what may happen is we'll get a timeout. This does happen occasionally on some queries. And if you do that, what you want to do is put some filters in, like a minimum round. For example, something you don't have to search in for from the beginning of the blockchain. Maybe you only created that asset recently. So pick a block that was like as of a month ago and start your search there. And that would work. So, oh, there it is. Okay, bullet console. I don't know why this is not coming up. Let me stop here. One more time here. I had a breakpoint right there. See if that. Okay. There, now we're on it. Okay, so let's go over that one. All right, good. So there's the information that came back for information for the asset name. Now, if you scroll through this, you'll see that some of these are named Rust coins, plural. So it's anything that starts with Rust coin. Then come down over here, that's a Rust coin there. And then this is a plural one. This is a singular one. And then we got right there. So the actual name is the expanded version. The unit name is always the short name of that. And this particular search is searching on this field right here. All right.
And then remind us, so they've lots of people have made Rust coins on testnet, but how do we know which one is the real Rust coin? Like what's unique about each of these, or where do we see that in the results there?
Yeah, you'd have to opt in to the index ID that's associated with this. So you can see here's the index ID right there. So you'd have to basically send a transaction to yourself of 0 amount, and it would then you'd opt in. So you'd have to find what is the index. And even when you're like in a wallet and you're looking up like the Algorand wallet. Let's see if I can find that here. I'm going off the script. All right, all bets are off here. So let's see what we got. Let's go out to the browser. Let's bring up the Algosigner. And this has a mainnet and a testnet. Let's go to testnet. So I've got this pizza demo. And when you're adding assets, add a new asset, I could do a search here. Let's see what comes up. I don't know if it's going to come up or not, but there they are, Rust coins. And now you can actually see the asset ID that's associated with this. So that is really that's the only thing that's unique about an asset is the asset ID. You can have the same name as you see here on several of these different assets, and you can even have the same unit name on these, and you can see the unit name is pasted right below it as you're searching for it. So that's really the way to figure out what it is. You do need to have this. That's it. That's what you need. So I'm going to cancel. Not bad for an off the script demo. How about that? Is that good there, Ryan?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Russ.
Great. All right.
And,
one of my favorite.
Just a reminder here, we got about 10 minutes left here.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, we're perfect. I got a couple more things to show. So perfect timing. One of my favorites is this one. And this is actually searching on a timestamp. This is a good example to put in your repertoire because there's going to be a time when somebody asks you, hey, can you look up this transaction? I know when it happened. I've got a printout of it. And here it is. And I want proof or whatever on this. So this is the start time that I'm going to do the search with. This is the address. So let me just run this. And now we're going to do a search for a transaction. We're going to pass in the address and we're going to pass in the start time. And the start time is just a string. It's in the date time format with the time zone and everything else specified in there. And now when I run this, it will go ahead and find that in the testnet right here. So this is the result of running that. And you can see there's the start time. And here is the information that's associated with that particular transaction. So that's a very useful one. You never know when you're going to need that. And let's do search the tech transaction address transaction type. So this is a code we're going to look at here now that has the query going after the transaction type. And there is the transaction type that we are going to look at. And there's different transaction types that you can look up in the doc, like multi-sig or whatever. And then here we see we're going to, let's run this again. There it is. Step over that, and there's the information down below that we have looked up for that particular transaction. So anything that's got this transaction type that you see in the response coming back, or it is transaction type ACFG, that'll be in there for this particular address. And then similarly, you can do things like with the sender and receiver. And lastly, I just want to show you my setup here. So this is the Postgres database that's running, and you can see it's constantly being updated here with our graphs. This is my testnet database. This is the node that I have running it, and this is a data archive node. So in fact, if I bring up the directory structure here on this particular node, if I go into the data archive folder, then I could see that there is a config JSON file, and a couple things I've got set in here. I've got archival set to true. Also, I've got enable developer API set to true. These are normally the defaults are off here, but then this will facilitate an archive node, and then also let you do smart contract development as well with the enable developer API. And so those are specified. I think I put a link in the resources coming up. All of those flags for configuring your node are there. And so that is the lay of the land there. And then finally, this is the node that's actually updating that database. And you can see each block, as it burns another block, it updates again. So it's right in sync with the node is how that particular database works. So let me wrap it up. I'm going to get back over to the deck here. And we covered a lot of things here today in terms of the Algorand Indexer. What is it? It's something that will skim off of the AlgoD node, take that data, and then populate it into a database, which is searchable, a lot easier to search. So what can I search on? Primarily transactions, assets, you've got accounts, and applications, right? Those are the four primary things. And a lot of them can either be like, give me a global search on all accounts, and then you specify filters, or you can look up a particular account and then apply filters on stuff that you're looking for on that account. That's pretty much the two categories that you have on searching. How do I access it? A lot of different ways. Pure Stake. You got Rand Labs with the Algo Explorer API. You've got Sandbox now as an option, or you can build your own. So the Sandbox, again, is the easiest way out of all of them, and that is done with PrivateNet. Then you're going to want to download either the Postman, run it Postman, or if you have another API query tool, or do curls is what you'll need to verify any of your data. I like to go bounce back and forth between Explorer and the code when I'm developing this, and I think you could see why, just to verify, yeah, it makes sense. This is the link for the deck, the PowerPoint. I'll leave this up there for a few seconds. This is the bit.ly for the deck today. And form, make sure you go out to sign up for more office hours. We got a nice session on tap a couple weeks from now with some really great developer tools. They are just not stopping, and it's really exciting time to be an Algorand developer with this flood of new technology that we're seeing happen. Forums are a great place. Also, we've got Discord on the very top. Please join that. We hang out there a lot, get a lot of questions answered. And I actually did a video conference on there for the first time the other day with folks over at Reach. That was pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that in Discord. So anyway, we're all learning this together, and these are some great resources that we've covered in previous sessions. You got all the VS Code tutorials if you're interested in checking out VS Code if you haven't used it yet. A lot of great community tools listed up there. Algorand Studio, we had Robert deliver that last week. You got Algodia, tremendous tool. And then we got the Playground as well, and Algo Desk IO. and signing up for the Developer Office newsletter. Thank you.